Okay, so this is part two, and I'm just going to carry on from part one. I was talking about reprisal crimes, and the worst assault was with a car. I was threatened by a man who claimed he was not the city councillor he looked identical to. He said my car was going to be hauled, and I would never walk straight again. Then, about 10 days later, I was hit on Highway 2 in Beamsville by a man driving in excess of 80 kilometers an hour while I was stopped behind a car turning left. The man who hit me, Jeffrey Wiersma, he told me that he and his father had hit lots of other victims too, including toddlers. He said that his father had put into the intensive care unit, whom he called whiners. And the Crown made a deal and told me he was sentenced to driving school for hitting several other victims. So I didn't get to bear witness. I would have told the court about the city councillor. Anyway, I might have believed the story that the man who threatened me looked identical to St. Catherine's councillor Joe Kushner, but was not him, were it not for a related incident. He had followed me to my residence and got past the secure entrance and knocked on my inside door and pushed notes under my door 3 times a day for 10 days straight. I still have those notes. So I had asked Niagara Regional Police Service Sergeant Matoga to help me. And initially he took my concerns seriously, but then he refused to help me further because he said I had phoned OPP and threatened to shoot some police officers, which I hadn't done at all. And so, I mean, that really upset me. That where would he hear that, and who would tell him that? So I phoned OPP and I spoke with Criminal Investigations Director Cliff Strawn, and he said he would look into it and get back to me. And when he did, he told me that no OPP had alleged any such thing. And I also at that time, or around that time, I also spoke to Don Bell and a number of other OPP officers. I kept a record of it all, and dates and times and who I spoke with and so on. Anyway, Anyway, after that, then one day Sergeant Matoga called me and asked me to attend the station. And then he put me in a room by myself, and I sat there for like 10 minutes or so. And then he came and he told me to leave. And I asked him, why did you invite me here only to tell me to leave? And he just walked away and shook his head like this. And he wouldn't explain. So to leave the station, I had to pass through the main lobby. And when I did, I saw it was full of uniformed officers. And that there in the middle of the uniformed officers was this man who said he was not Councillor Joe Kushner. And when the uniformed officers saw me, they all began to laugh uproariously, really big belly, ha, 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 laughs. All of them. There was like, I don't know, at least a dozen officers in there. And they all started laughing, and when they did, that was his cue. He had his back to me the whole time, but he put his hands up over his head and started doing this, like wiggling his hips and doing this sexy dance thing, right? Now, I had to walk behind him because he did that slowly out the door and down the path to the sidewalk. And I had to walk behind him to leave the station. And they laughed. They laughed all the way. I could hear them laugh even when I reached the sidewalk, and I turned in the other direction from where this idiot went. Anyway, that incident convinced me that the man was indeed Councillor Joe Kushner, because I just didn't believe that the police would do that for someone who this man claimed to be. He called himself Art Reed and claimed that he was a retired bachelor guy living in a motel room, which I just don't, I don't believe the police would do that, would engage in that kind of harassment of a woman who had complained that this same man was stalking her. I just don't believe the police would do that for anyone who wasn't at least a city councillor. So I think I mean, the police can ask people. You can ask Sergeant Matoga. I'm pretty sure he'd know. Chief Nichols would know about it as well. Other people who worked at that time, Officer Jolie and Detective Smith and Officer Chitty, Mark Trojan, all those officers, they'd all know about it. I'm pretty sure. And I'm sure that there would be officers among the officers that took part. I'm sure they would remember it as well. Anyway, over the years, I have met a lot of people, complete strangers, including social services, civil servants, who have told me off, just out of the blue, for standing up for my disabled clients, because apparently it's quite common to think that the disabled, they should just be grateful for any employment they get and just comply with demands for blowjobs, to get their paychecks. I mean, I found that unacceptable, and but I was shocked by how many people have over the years, individuals working in that field, telling me that you shouldn't stand up for people with disabilities. Anyway, as part of the Reprisal, I was literally driven. I was driven from residence to residence to residence by crime. I mean, death threats, arson, and police would tell me to move as well. And I was driven from job to job. I mean, things would happen at my job. And I was driven from city to city until finally I realized either I would stay put and, put my life on the line, or I would end up dead anyway, because, eventually I'd end up in some place. I'd lose my car, and I wouldn't have any money, and nobody would know me, and then, how easy just to murder me, and, nobody would know who I was anyway, and then just, so what? And one RCMP officer, he said it wouldn't matter where I ran anyway, because they would find me wherever I went. So, I mean, it's not like people didn't know what was going on. RCMP knew, OPP knew, people knew. Mary Shenette at New Identities for Victims of Abuse, she knew. MPP Diane Cunningham had referred me to Mary Shenette, and Mary Shenette said they weren't taking clients at that time because the Jane Does that they were relocating were getting murdered as soon as they relocated. She advised me to hide right out in the open. So, that's what I've tried to do by reporting every crime to police and, just talking about it. So, anyway, I stayed in Lindsay, even though, Court Lakes police tried to get me to leave as well, and, did nothing either about the ongoing reprisal that I reported to them. Just hang on. For example, one time, a woman approached me in Victoria Park and told me if I didn't lie low, I would be beat up beyond recognition. I asked by whom, and she said the Hells Angels, and I asked why, and she said, "We don't have free speech in Canada, So there you go. Police said it wasn't a threat, but a warning, and as a warning, warning someone isn't a crime. They didn't investigate it. And also the officer said, "You're not a big drug dealer, Hells Angels, they're not going to kill you because, it would bring them too much heat, and you don't owe them $10,000. So, another time, a woman who identified herself as Lydia Cousins, she walked up to me with another woman while I was at a computer terminal in Victoria County Career Services. She made her hand like this, into a gun gesture, and she aimed it at me, and she said, and I think she got it wrong a bit, I think she should have said "we" both times, but she said, "I am the mob, and we are going to shoot you, bang!" And then she and the other woman turned around and walked straight out. Anyway, and I told Lisa Rod at Barry DeVolen's office about it, and I wrote to Michael Bryant about it in a letter, and I didn't end up mailing it because I showed it to Lisa Rod at Barry DeVolen's office, and she kept it. She said she was going to fax it to Barry because he should know what was going on. But, again, nothing happened to help me out with regard to that. However, and another time, while I was chairing a hearing at the Insurance Board of Referees in Peterborough, a job that MP Barry DeVolen had recommended I apply for, and he provided me a reference, a fellow board member, Barry Davies, turned to me and said, completely out of the blue, your dog attacked someone and we are going to shoot your dog. And he had bragged that he went turkey shooting with Crown lawyers and police. And shortly after that, the director of the department said, we would get you fired if we could. And she suspended my work. So it meant that I was employed. I kept the appointment for 3 years, which was kind of prestigious, you know, a governor and council appointment. But they couldn't fire me because appointees can't be fired unless they're convicted or found not criminally responsible of a criminal offense. And she, you know, at one point I said, well, I would tape record an interview. I felt I was being set up. And she said, I will guarantee things will get much worse for you if you do that. And anyway, I'm going to have to sign off again because YouTube won't let me make any, well, they won't let me make longer videos. And anyway, I'll just finish by telling you that they killed my dog. They killed my dog while I was in Toronto training for the Insurance Board of Referees that I was appointed chair for by the Governor and Council. They went into my room. I had my dog with me. I stayed at a motel, Novotel, where you could have a dog. I had her in a crate and everything is regulated. They had moved the crate. They didn't even bother putting it back in place where it was, and she was really sick. They'd taken her out. They put some sort of something on her skin that was greasy, and then she died a couple of weeks later. Anyway, I'll resume on another tape.